Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Chambers here in Edinburgh. I know that in the current climate, as we all continue to wrangle with the legacy of the COVID pandemic, the influences at play of the cost of living crisis, the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, ordinary people, could not be more pertinent or poignant. The Holocaust Memorial Day Trust explains the theme. Genocide is facilitated by ordinary people. Ordinary people turn a blind eye, believe propaganda, join murderous regimes. And those who are persecuted, oppressed, and murdered in genocide aren't persecuted because of crimes they've committed. They're persecuted simply because they are ordinary people who belong to a particular group, whether that's Roma, Jewish community, Tutsi, or whatever. Ordinary people were involved in all aspects of the Holocaust, Nazi persecution of other groups, and in the genocides that took place in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur. Ordinary people were perpetrators, were bystanders, were rescuers, were witnesses, and ordinary people were victims. In every genocide, those targeted faced limited choices, what they call choiceless choices. But in every genocide, the perpetrators have choices, ordinary people have choices. Historically, and even today in our world of multiple technologies, we continue to see increasing levels of denial, division, and misinformation, and hatred, persecution, and identity-based hostility. For example, we hear and see, thanks to the multiple media channels, how the military and economic might of Russia is being used to persecute and ruthlessly bully the people of Kyiv and wider Ukraine. This conflict is not far away or remote from Edinburgh. It's happening to the people of our twinned city, with bombs raining down and blackouts and homelessness being inflicted upon them. Here at home, Russian aggression is also impacting on our own lives, with eye-watering energy and living costs, meaning that for our ordinary people who are also being exploited, poverty-stricken families are being hardest hit. However, in a nod against oppressors, ordinary people from across Edinburgh's key sectors have yet again stepped forward. So we've worked to warmly welcome around 10,000 heroic Ukrainians fleeing the conflict. Safely received through Edinburgh's Welcome Hub over 800 Ukrainians residing in Edinburgh with homes for Ukraine hosts, and over 1,250 people living and supported on board the MS Victoria down there in the port of Leith. And I want to send my sincere gratitude to everybody who's been involved in assisting our Ukrainian friends. Of course, the Russian aggression is not happening in isolation with other exploitative regimes or minority groups trying to oppress populations, whether it's in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Ethiopia, Somalia, or Eritrea, to name but a few. But what is common across all of these conflicts is that our fellow women, men, and children, or the most vulnerable, are the victims. It seems that some of us cannot live peacefully side by side, or respect, or understand, or appreciate each other's differences, or indeed be willing to share sustainable resources. If we're to learn anything today about the horrific experiences of Holocaust victims and survivors of oppressive regimes, whether in the past or in the present, it is that we, as a world family, should avoid military confrontation at all costs, as it does nothing to further our societies. We cannot and should not bury our heads in the sand on these matters. Instead, we need to confront those who seek to do harm to others. In order to avoid repeating our shared past, we all need to do better. We need to expect and demand more from our leaders, including myself, who have a key role in early intervention and prevention. And it's therefore all the more important that in hearing survivors' stories, as we will very shortly, we all carefully listen to their reflections. We share and consider the important messages of what they have to tell us and what we should not forget or cast aside as someone else's problem. Some of the images of suffering and the stories of survivors from Ukraine have been heartbreaking. In today's video, you'll hear from local children who've experienced sickening bullying and hatred because they're a refugee, or they're Muslim, or they're from the LGBT community. While locally, we must all look to the future with both hope and ambition for our recovery at the same time. We must work collectively and as hard as we can together to ensure that genocide, the grotesque exploitation and the dehumanization of any of our fellow citizens, whether it's in person or via media, should not occur anywhere, should not be repeated, and is not acceptable in this modern global age. Instead, values such as respect, patience, support, and mutuality should be practiced across our cultures. And I believe that Edinburgh is a capital where we warmly welcome and celebrate other cultures and their added value to our own, but we have to work hard to make sure it stays that way. So, once again, my enormous thanks to the Edinburgh Interfaith Association and partners for their year-round efforts in helping our multicultural city thrive and in helping celebrate our cultural diversity. It's now my enormous privilege to introduce Marie Jeanne Umutesi and her sisters Delphine Heriwe and Natasha Ishimwe. You're going to hear the remarkable story of courage and resilience of one young girl, only 12 years old, fighting against all the odds to guide her younger siblings to survival during the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi. That young girl was Marie, and today they're reunited together here on stage as her sisters have flown all the way from Rwanda to share their remarkable story in the hope that similar tragic events can be prevented from ever happening again. So I invite you up to the stage now, and we very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be with you today on Holocaust Memorial Program. As I said, my name is Umutesi Marie Jeanne Stewart, and I was born in Rwanda in 1982. I am the second born child of 5 siblings to my single mom. We were 4 sisters and 1 brother, and you can imagine the situation that my mom was in managing 5 of us in her own. And all the stigma that she went with that too. We did have our grandmother and grandfather to help, and I loved them very much. My granddad was a nurse, and I followed in his footsteps. So I grew up as a second eldest sister. I went to Anglican church, and as a kid I sang in the choir. My voice now is so nice. I also loved playing with my neighbors' children in Rwanda. When you have neighbors, it's just like you are part of a big family. Rwanda is a very beautiful African country that borders on Burundi, Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tanzania. Sadly, There had been many years of political tension in Rwanda when I was growing up. And then came to Rwandan Civil War, which was really a guerrilla war. It's a long story and it's direct linked to colonial rule, but basically the country's majority Hutu populations and minority Tutsi population were in constant conflict with each other. And when the ruling Hutu president died on plane crash in 1994, tension between the groups erupted into violence. In 1994, more than 1 million died in 100 days of Rwandan genocide. Primarily Tutsi, but also moderate Hutus. Around 2 million Rwandans also fled the country immediately after the genocide. It is more complicated than this, but we only have a short time, and I want to share my story with you. In 1990, I was still a child, not even 12 years old. And I didn't necessarily understand politics, but I understood things were not good, and I could hear guns, the rumors of war, and I knew we were not safe. There was a short period of peace in 1993, but during that so-called peaceful period, there was a movement to plan a final solution, which was exterminate all Tutsis. This plan was put into action following the assassination of President Habyarimana Juvenal on 6 April 1994. The Hutu blamed the Tutsis for his death, and as I have already said, over the course of about 100 days, around 1 million Tutsis and moderates Hutu were killed and the genocide. And so, what happened to me? Well, to be honest, my family were a complicated mix of Tutsi and Hutu. And no one of us knew what would happen to us. It was a terrifying time. There were rapes taking place, people were getting murdered. It was worse than nightmare for everybody, especially the Tutsis. I remember I was young, but I could see people shaking. Very quickly, barriers were put and all the roads were closed. It was a chaos and noisy everywhere. People were begging for mercy, and there were killings all day long. The killings were brutal, and mostly with machete or knives. And after killing people, the Hutu measures just took everything from your house, or they burned your house down. My mom was born in the same area as the president, so you can imagine how things were. People were very, very angry and saying that they needed to finish all Tutsis people, and they called them cockroaches, even over the radio. They tried to dehumanize all Tutsis. My siblings were mixed, as I said, and that put all of us in danger. The time that genocide started, my mom knew we were all in terrible danger. As we were quite near the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, she thought we should try and escape to there. The escape to the jungle of Congo was terrible, as all around us people were dead or dying. We tried to stay with relatives en route, but they said that it was not safe with them, so we ended cornered. It was only a few months since my mom had given birth without any medical support, and she was still recovering. My mom worked with us over weeks, hiding from the people hunting us, and with a little food water. She became too tired and could not walk any longer. She really needed to go to the hospital, but there was no hospital or any help. There was no food, no shelter, and my mom knew there was not enough nutrition for the baby to survive. And that it is when she looked toward me, because my older sister was not with us. She ran away since that happened. She was very scared, and she ran since that time. We lost her, but good things that she's in Canada, but this is 28 years that I had never met her. So that was me, still a child myself, but my mom cried that she can't walk anymore and telling me, you need to look after your 3 siblings. So she gave me the scarf she had, and put my sister on my back. She was just 6 months old, and my brother Shuti was 7 years old. So, and Delphine, my sister, was 4 years old. That's the last time we saw my mom. She was later murdered by being burned alive in the car in front of the house where she was staying. We walked and walked. We had neighbors, friends from the Congo, who urged us on going toward the Congo and the jungle after a long time. I made it to the jungle, but sadly, my 7 years old brother Shuti didn't make it. He died of malnutrition and exhaustion. His suffering was over. Myself, as a young teenager, my 2 sisters, Natasha and Delphine, aged 7 months and 4 years old, made it to the jungle, but everywhere in the Congo it was not safe. But at least we sometimes found they were occasionally nice people who are proof they had nothing themselves, but they tried to help us. I took on the huge responsibility of my sister and changed from a young girl to a mother. But it was such a struggle in the jungle. I didn't have anything to feed Natasha and Delphine in the jungle of Congo, where I lived for 5 years with the animals, avoiding kidnapping or being killed, raped, avoiding disease or being attacked by people or animals, or I knew I had to protect my sisters. I was fierce about this. The jungle is more 5 times size of Scotland. We survived on pools of water, some grains, nuts, and fruits, and sometimes people would help us. I have so many stories to share with you about our jungle survival, but there is no time now. One day I will write my story. After so many years in the Congo jungle, I decided I needed to return to Rwanda. I just couldn't live in the jungle anymore. I don't know how we survived. I believe God looked after us. I did things that were beyond my age, and I can't even do those things now. I was like really looking after my sisters, protecting them, feeding them, and we walked for days again out of the jungle and back to Rwanda. I decided if I was going to die, might as well be in my country. When I got to Rwanda, I found that nearly all my family were killed. I lost 40 people in the entire family. That was my aunties, my grannies, my cousins, and some were pregnant, babies, all of them gone. So, yeah, I was broken-hearted, traumatized, so alone and so scared. I found only one uncle alive. I did found my dad that I had never met before, but he was too traumatized to assist in any way, and so I just forgave him and I had to raise my sister alone. It's a long story, but eventually went back to school, graduated as a general nurse. It wasn't easy at all, but I had to look after my sisters. They were my priority. We lived in a terrible poverty after graduating. I started the job as a nurse. My sister finished their high school and they are still in Rwanda. The story has a happy ending. Someone called Ian came to Rwanda from Scotland and we met, fell in love, and after time we got engaged in 2013. And in 2014 we got married and I moved to Scotland. Ian, I was a musician, and we kicked over a song he wrote called Window of Peace. And I wish with all my heart that we can all find peace in this world. We now have two beautiful young children, Iona and Isla. I love my new home of Scotland, and I will do all I can to finish my British nursing degree here and contribute to society. From my testimony, I hope that all of you can see how terrible genocide is, but how strong the human spirit is. Today, there is even happier ending to our story because after so many years, we have been able to bring my sisters Delphine and Natasha that we survived together to visit us in Scotland. They are here today and they're going to share their powerful poem with you. I can hardly tell you how overjoyed I am to have Delphine and Natasha here. Stand here with me. We are three young women and we are survivors of a terrible genocide. And we want to thank you all for listening to our story. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. As my sister said, my name is Shimi Natasha. I'm the last born in our family. I want to read this poem for you. In April 1994, grief and sorrow spread over our hearts and turned to anger. Rwanda became dark and the people who lived there were sad as the bodies of young children and babies were covered the land of thousand hills. Our young people were left crying and sad. We were sad as the milk being taken from us, and we were left as orphans, angry, hungry, and alone. Our parents were gone, but we will always remember you, and we kneel every night and pray for you. The milk that left us taken with our loved ones leaves us as orphans, leaves us as angry and broken-hearted. Our parents, we will always remember you. We dedicate our lives to making you proud. to fighting for a world free from pain and anger. We will burn the eternal light that spreads peace and love. We will fight against hate, ideology that causes one human to hate another. Because of the way they were created, we will build a world where everyone lives without discrimination. We will fight against injustice. We will fight against the religious divisions and fight for the unity of countries. We will sow the seeds of love and peace and fight against genocide ideology and divisions. Let's light the light everywhere. My parents, you were taken from us too soon. You were not there to see us finish our schools, to see us get married, to have our own children. You gave birth to us, you loved us, you sacrificed everything for us, and you were taken away from us. But we will remember the love you showed us, and we will continue to spread that love and light the light of peace for everyone. We say a prayer and we remember you. We remember all innocent people who have died in genocide. We unite together in one voice, calling for peace, calling never, never again for genocide. Thank you.
Lord Provost, pupils from Longstone and Preston Street primary schools, distinguished trustees of the Edinburgh Interfaith Association, and those trustees include, for the first time in the history of our city, the Lord Provost, who sits with us in the front row. We're deeply honored that you agreed to join our association as a trustee. And all friends here and throughout the world who share our deep commitment to compassion, understanding, social justice, and yes, as Umutesi so eloquently said, forgiveness too. A few years ago, I was the guest of a major leader in a Middle Eastern country. He invited me to a dinner with some other senior government officials. Before the drink orders were even placed, he startled me by asking, "Why do you Jews hate us so much?" I was gobsmacked. The other guests leaned forward anxiously, awaiting my reply. I immediately told my host that I did not hate him. In fact, I loved him as my brother, who had warmly welcomed me to his beautiful country. He then explained that he owned hotels in both Jordan and Israel, and every time he tried to cross the border to Israel, he found it difficult because of his Jordanian citizenship. He then asked me in a very pleading voice, "Can you just please forget all our past troubles?" Well, I thought about his question, and then I replied that my mother of blessed memory had told me many times when my father, a Jewish man who had suffered experiences of anti-Semitism, including having men dressed as Nazis march in front of his shop, and members of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist group, burn a large cross in front of our home. My mother told me that she could have allowed at those times hate to grow in her heart. These were horrifying experiences indeed, and yet my mother said, as did my father's mother, who had also escaped the Nazis, "You must always forgive. However," she added, "you must never forget." So thank you, Umutesi, Natasha, your sisters, for your brilliant testimony today that help us better understand the trauma that you and your family faced, and showing us that through love we may find a way forward, and at the same time remember that ordinary people such as yourselves can do both terrible and wonderful things. We shall long remember you ordinary women, whose extraordinary courage, bravery, and commitment to future peace among all people will inspire all of us for a long time to come. And I ask you to once more, please join me in expressing our deep appreciation. Would you stand up? Now it is my pleasure to introduce someone from another generation who is also an ordinary woman who is doing extraordinary things with leading Jewish people, young people, and others upon the campus of one of the world's greatest universities. Sarah Cohen is a leader of the University of Edinburgh's Jewish Students on Campus organization. She is originally from Chicago, Illinois in the United States, and during her time at Edinburgh University, her organization has grown in both size and service to others. Sarah has a few words today, especially for our friends from Longstone Primary and Preston Street Primary, because she knows that this next generation of students in our audience today will follow hers. So I invite our guests from Longstone and Preston Street Primary Schools to listen very carefully to what Sarah has to say. And I ask that all of you join me in welcoming Sarah to speak to you now. Sarah?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to all of you for sharing your memories of one of humanity's darkest past. Now each person in this room has a story and people to really ensure that this never happens again. Thank you. I want to begin by talking about something very specific to our, and I'm looking at all of you in primary school's generation. For most of my life, technology has given us extremely quick access to news. We are constantly reading, listening, and watching stories, both good and bad, which result in many monumental events going unnoticed. Those that do go noticed typically result in viral hashtags or graphics being shared on one's homepage. People in support add emoji hearts, comments, and thoughts and prayers as an attempt to show support from any distance away. Although, as a few days pass, people slowly stop posting, they slowly stop commenting, and another world event arises in its place. The world moves on, and the conversations of change dwindle down. One notable time I saw this happen in my life was in my second last year of high school, and a school shooting happened at Stone Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people and injuring many more. The world joined together on social media to convey their prayers and thoughts to the families and friends affected by this tragedy. The youth online started posting and started speaking out about the necessity of gun reform. The difference to me in this event compared to all others was that a girl that I was involved with in the same Jewish youth group was murdered in this event. This was the first time in my short life that this had impacted someone I knew. It was the first time in my short life that I had felt that these comments and graphics posted on social media were nothing but hollow and performative. Fast forward a few days after the initial incident, and I saw the same pattern on social media occur. People stopped talking about the shooting, people stopped posting, and people quickly moved on to discuss the next world event that arose in its place. No one followed through with the necessary reforms of gun violence, and we've had to see many incidents occur since. The difference for me in this situation was that I was no longer just a person posting and showing support from a distance away. I was no longer just a person on the other side of the world sending my thoughts and prayers to humans I have never met and might never meet. This was in my community, with people I have met and will continue to see, with people who aren't just going to, because they aren't able to, move on in a few short days. This is when it clicked for me that the way our generation reacts to tragedies on social media is uncomforting. Although we all have good intentions behind it, it's not effective after events like this occur. Hashtags, graphics, and comments are not enough to numb the pain of the injustices and the tragedies that occur all around us, and it's certainly not enough to kickstart tangible change. The tragedy that my community endured taught me this lesson, and this is what I hope you leave here remembering. Each world event that might seem so distant and so far away isn't as far as you think. Each person that lived through a tragedy, like the many Holocausts and genocides we've discussed today, has a family. They all have brothers, sisters, parents, guardians, aunts, and uncles that have had to witness and grapple with the reality of these rollbacks of mankind, as we got to hear from today. On Holocaust remembrance, we must remember that genocides and Holocausts are not as far from home, and they are not a phenomenon of the past, but they are still occurring today, right before our eyes, and a hashtag or solidarity isn't going to solve it. What is going to help ensure an end to all of this is each and every one of you in the audience today. Each and every one of you have the power to use your voice for good and to aid in making feasible, progressive change for those that might not be able to at this moment speak out for themselves. No matter how small or young you might feel, that is where actual change begins, and I encourage and believe in each and every one of you to make a change in your community and to different communities around the world. Your generation is going to be the ones that are going to no longer passively stand by and are going to actively engage in putting an end to violence. By doing so, you're helping that person with a mother, a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a friend, and a neighbor not have to endure more pain that so many have had to face before. So after all of that, you might ask, what's next? Where do I begin after today? Well, I call upon Eric, Aaliyah, Lucy, Siva, Grace, Caden, Una, Riley, and all the rest of you here today to do these three tangible things after this event. First, tell one friend, family member, or peer that might not have been able to attend today who you saw speak. Continuing these conversations that we began today is the first tangible step you can make towards change. Second, when you see a news event being posted out online and floods of comments and graphics and hashtags are happening, be the one to ask, be the one to comment, be the one to bring it off the phone and ask, how can we take this conversation off social media, and what's the first step to change? And thirdly, I believe, and you must all believe in yourselves, that you can use your voice for any good you possibly can, and must do so. You all must and cannot any longer stand idly by while injustices and horrible acts of mankind are continuing to happen. Thank you guys all for attending. Thank you to the artists, and thank you to our speakers who have really changed our lives and given us a reason to ensure that this truly never happens again.
Thank you, Sarah. As you were speaking, I was thinking in the American tradition at a bar, a bat mitzvah, when a Jewish child becomes an adult at age 13, there's a tradition that Sarah, I'm sure, is familiar with, where the grandmother will pass the Torah, the Jewish Bible, to the mother, and the mother to the child. So Sarah, thank you for passing your message and your challenge to the next generation so eloquently today. Thank you for that. Join me in thanking her once more. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. throughout the world, thousands of people will watch the Holocaust Memorial Day film produced by our executive director, Ian Stewart. It will be available for some time, but it'll be screened officially tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We've prepared a short highlight for you now. So Paul, if you'll please roll the video.
I was 3 years old when it got real bad in Syria, and they weren't letting no food in and milk, and my brothers were really young, they were 3 months old, so they really needed some milk. So we found it hard living there, so we tried to move to Iraq. My dad worked to get a job first, get a house and everything. Afterward, a few months later, we went after him. It was kind of hard because they closed the border from Civic to Iraq, so we had to sneak into Iraq. First time we failed, but the second time we were able to go. We went to the refugee camp there, and we lived there for a few years, about 6 years I think. I would say it was much better than Syria, but they were still boring epic, so it didn't make that much of a difference. When I was 5, my dad died, but he was working, so I was
Once again, you'll be able to view that tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Now I'd like to invite our Lord Provost and our 8 talented artists to come forward. Young people, if you'll come sit in these chairs. And the Lord Provost has agreed to conduct an interview with our young artists to talk about their motivations for the work they've created. And these wonderful teachers from Longstone Primary are bringing in the mural that you saw when you walked in the city chambers today. It was so large, the only place we could display it was in front, and I think that was just perfect. So over to you, Lord Provost.
Okay, no pressure. Right. Thanks very much. Who's Longstone? Who's Longstone? Okay, so this is your wonderful piece of art here. So tell me, what's your first name? Una, right. And so what did you want to do with this piece of art? What did you want to do?
Well, we wanted to make a giant mural, ordinary people, so we're all ordinary, and any of this could happen to us. It doesn't matter what race you are, it could happen to anyone.
Okay. And whose idea was it? Was it a teacher? Was it yours? Was it everybody coming together?
It was all of us that came up with it.
Excellent. And did you have a specific thing that you did in it, or was everybody just working together?
Everyone was working together to do it.
Fantastic, thanks.
That the world isn't perfect and that bad things do happen in our world, but there are ways to fix those bad things.
Absolutely. Very perfect, really. Thanks very much indeed. And you? Riley. Okay, Riley. And so, how involved were you with this?
So, we all worked together as a team. Some of us did the images, some of us helped with drawing the rainbow, some of us helped with our PowerPoint, and some of us helped with researching the ordinary people.
Okay, and which sort of parts were you involved in?
I was in part with researching.
Excellent. Good. That's obviously come out really well. And you are?
Kate.
Kate, okay, thanks, Kate. So, what do you think is the most important message from the art? What do you think it's trying to say most?
I think it's trying to say that outside there's people who've been in genocide, and they're ordinary people just like us, so that could happen to us at any time.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a fantastic piece of art. It's really powerful. And I think everybody should be congratulated for all the roles you did, and particularly because you worked together as a team on it. So thank you very much indeed. onto Preston Street. So, you are?
My name is Alicia.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a bit about this piece of artwork?
So we have the bubbles, and basically our bubbles represent the different kinds of people that were in the Holocaust, and the most bubbles are the bystanders, because they were the people who saw everything. They saw the persecution of the victims, and they didn't do anything about it because they were scared of for their families, and sometimes they would even participate. But yeah, so that's our artwork.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Christine. And you're okay. So, what part did you play in this?
I drew some parts of the child shot with one or two other kids.
Okay. And who came up with the whole idea? Was it everybody together? Or?
It was a kid from our class called Bilo.
Well done. Well done to that. It's a really, really good idea. That's fantastic. You did that. And you are? Okay. Just tell me about what part were you involved in?
Well, so we each share like a bubble representing 3 different types of people. And adding a bit more, our idea was to make people kind of feel something. There's 3 types of people. What type do you want to be?
Okay, so with your 3, what were you trying to say?
So it's like with the images, you can see kind of what they're doing. So you can see that. Do you want to be the person who's turning their back? Do you want to be the person who's actively helping, or do you want to be this person who's actively persecuting?
Excellent, excellent, really powerful actually. Thanks very much. And your name is?
Lucy.
Lucy. And tell me about your part of this.
I kind of helped the child, and I also did the perpetrators, because I actually attacking them.
And what do you think is the most important message from this?
There's lots of people who's in the world, and there's perpetrators and bystanders and rescuers, and yeah.
That's fantastic. Listen, it's another fantastic, powerful piece of art which has got a lot of meaning. I'd just like to thank both primary schools for producing such wonderful, powerful works of art and getting the message through, which is the theme of this Holocaust year, which is, that ordinary people cannot stand by. We all need to play our part. We cannot afford to just stand by and watch things happen. So thank you so much. They're brilliant, and didn't they perform brilliantly in the interview? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord Provost and students, for that very interesting and informative conversation that's helped all of us today appreciate even more your beautiful artwork, and also the importance of collaboration to increase our understanding of how we are all part of a village, whether it be Edinburgh or Scotland or the United Kingdom or far beyond the universe. Whether your village is a school, a neighborhood, or a great city such as Edinburgh, or a family that you come from, by working together, we may always seek, as you've demonstrated today, to produce something bigger and greater. Now, some have defined this process of working together as our hope for a better world to come. I now invite all of you to join our Lord Provost, the first citizen of our city, our student artists, and myself, as we light this candle of memory and hope to honor those who lost their lives in the Jewish Holocaust, the Rwandan and Bosnian genocide, or through other evil acts that demonstrated in times past man's inhumanity to man. In just a few days, we have just recently celebrated celebrated the 264th birthday of Scotland's legendary national poet, Robert Burns. Burns often wrote about how we as brothers, and I would add sisters and all others, wrote and should, despite our differences, find ways to love one another. In perhaps his most famous poem that many sang last night, that was created near the end of his very short life, he wrote these words as a sacred prayer for future generations, such as Sarah offered to the students that are with us today. This prayer is for all of you. Then let us pray that it may come, and come it will for a that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the gree and a that, for and a that, and a that, and a that, and it's coming yet for a that man to man, that woman to woman, and all others, the world o'er, shall brothers and sisters and all people be for that. Now I invite the Lord Provost to light our memorial candle, and this will be followed by a moment of silent memory and hopeful reflection. Our candle, Lord Provost, is the gift from the Edinburgh Interfaith Association to the city as a new ritual. It was crafted especially for this occasion by the Incorporation of Trades Candle Makers of Edinburgh. So it's an original work of art created for our city, and year after year we will provide a new candle for this annual tradition. Could I ask our speakers to come join us, and our executive director and the artist, would you come up, please? Would you like to stand over here? Thank you. Now I'd like to invite our Executive Director, Ian Stewart, to offer a few closing words.
Thank you, Joe. It's very hard to bring things to a conclusion, and it's been such an emotional time. And I have the honour of giving the vote of thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank the Lord Provost for his opening remarks, for his interview with the children and his support today, and for sponsoring today's reception. I thank Sarah Cohen of Edinburgh University Jewish Students Campus. I felt particularly strong practical messages for us to take away that we can all do, that you can all do as students, to make a difference, to stop these kind of horrible acts happening again that we've heard about today. And it just feels so poignant, unfortunately, just after recent shootings in California, to be again hearing this today. So, just as you said, hashtags are not enough. You know, we really need to put pressure on our leaders to be making these changes, and gun enforcement, etc. Particularly want to thank the students of Wongston, Besson Street Primary School. I mean, how fantastic was the artwork that we see? So the mural was gone, but we can see it on the screen. And the reflections, particularly from the student, I was so impressed. Sarah and I were just talking, wisdom beyond your years, and hopefully, and as you continue, you will be the future leaders that will make much wiser, better decisions and choices, so that we don't result in wars people running around with guns when they shouldn't be, and all sorts of horrible things happening that we've heard today. I want to thank, of course, candle makers for gifting this candle. I think it's quite symbolic and very important that every year in the City Chambers this candle will be lit, so that the City of Edinburgh pays its respects to all those who have died in Holocaust and subsequent genocides. I'd like to think that Edinburgh has some influence, being the home of the Parliament, to also have a voice. The Lord Provost has very eloquently spoken out about Ukraine and what can be done, but we need to be speaking out against other atrocities in other parts of the world as well, that we can have an influence. And we will take the Lord Provost, I'm sure, up on his invitation to put pressure on the Lord Provost and other politicians when we want things to change, when we want peace. I want to thank also Jane in the Lord Provost office, who was very helpful at last minute changes to the programme in the room. We appreciate that. Especially want to thank our chair Joe, who just so well held everything together today. But I guess one of the most important vote of thanks, you'll be surprised that I have to give, is to my wife, Umutesi. Many people might not know that Marie Jeanne is my wife, and I was the musician in that story. But that's another story as to how Ian was a musician in Rwanda. And to Delphine and Natasha, it's hard for me to believe that you are here with us. It's a miracle, it's a blessing. And just how you held it together to read that poem, to tell the story, I don't know. I mean, I was breaking up just listening to that. So, just want to say, overall, I think everybody here was very moved, and I'd like to hope that everyone will walk away after hearing your story and think, I need to share that story, I need to share that lesson, I need to tell other people that there's more that we need to do to stop that happening today. I think for a lot of people here, there's a surprise that people so young, that it's still happening, and it's still in recent times. This isn't something that happened a long time in history. This is something that continues today, and we need to stop families being killed, families suffering in the way that you have so tragically done. The theme of Holocaust Memorial Day has been, of course, is ordinary people, and I do have in my mind a picture of a very ordinary child, much like the children we have today, thinking back to Umutesi when she was only 12 years old, playing with her friends, looking forward to starting high school. I just can't imagine what was going through your mind when your mother had to speak to you and say, now you have to be the parent, you have to look after the sisters, you have to save them. And I just don't know how you found the strength and the resilience. And when many people ask me who are the people that you look up to, I quite often say it's my wife I look up to, because I don't know how she has the strength and the courage, the resilience to overcome all the odds. It's like some sort of film that you might see and think, this is too much to believe, but it's the truth. But I think the most important thing we need to take away from today is the message here that the genocide in Rwanda, the Holocaust, we have to do what we can to stop these happening. I want to take you back to the video you saw with Helene, the girl in Graham High School. It's so important that there are young people being victims today of bullying. And the Holocaust, the genocide, it didn't start all of a sudden overnight. It was a long time of name-calling, dehumanising, putting people down to a point where they were nothing to you and you felt you could do horrible things to them. So I think what I would really love is if you could try and promise me, when you see people like Helene who have been picked on because they're different, that you tell a teacher, you tell someone, or when you can, you try and have time to speak to that person and make sure that they're okay. I think that's the strong thing. When you can, obviously if it's safety, you can challenge the behaviour, but the important thing is what we need to do is to try and stop this kind of thing happening again, because as we say, that is where it starts. And I was just so heartbreaking when you watch the video tomorrow, which goes out at 10 o'clock. There are other people as well, not just Helene. There's Aisha, there's Casey, there's a few other young people sharing their own examples of bullying because of LGBT hate crime. LGBT, of course, LGBT people, plus people were victims of the Holocaust as well. And there are still some people who are being bullied today because their sexual orientation is different, or because their skin colour is different. And so these are really things that we need to try and stop. So when you watch that video tomorrow, I hope you all do, and I hope you all encourage your parents and your brothers, your sisters to watch that programme. You will hear amazing testimonies, but you will also hear young people warning you of, we need to stop bullying today so that we don't have other people suffering like these people are. And one thing, one of the girls said in the video, always stuck in me as well, is that what hurt her about racism was it wasn't just the fact that people would say things to her face, it was the so-called nice kids in the class who were supposed to be friends who would say things in their peer group as well. And that made her walk away and cry. So there's something else there as well. We really need to, it's never cool to be using these sort of terms that put people down because of a skin colour or their sexual orientation. There's something else that makes them stand out and look different. If you see people doing that, we need to challenge that. So by challenging that and saying that, you know, these kind of things are not cool, you're doing your own small part to prevent genocides from re-happening. Because as I say, that's where it starts. It just starts with these small things, these name-calling, these dehumanising. So if you do your own little bit and you challenge, say, look, no, it's not cool. It's not good that you're saying that about this person. I don't think you should be saying that about our skin colour, or I don't think you should be saying that about this person. So if you do that, you're doing your own small part. And I want to just close, just say, in the words of the song that took me to Rwanda, Window of Peace, that was referenced earlier, there is a vision of a better world that we can make piece by piece. And that means no racism, no hate. And for a brighter tomorrow, we must work hard today, or together we can wash the tears away as we watch our children play through the window.